everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Megan Staz. I'm the Vice President for Packaging and Sustainability with the Consumer Brands Association. We would very much like to thank PwC for their support of the CPG Speaks series. Information on upcoming sessions can be found online at consumerbrandsassociation.org/CPG Speaks. Today, we're joined by two distinguished speakers in the world of sustainability, Michael Okorafor, who is the Vice President for Global Sustainability and Packaging Innovation at the McCormick Company, and Ann Tracy, the Chief Sustainability Officer for Colgate-Palmolive. Truly sustainable operations and minimized environmental footprints require progress in a broad range of factors, as those of us who work in this area well know. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by two leading CPG companies in this space, and over the next hour, we'll discuss how Colgate-Palmolive and McCormick Company view sustainability holistically, how they set and aim to reach high-level goals, and how you can begin influencing your company's practices in this area. And thank you to everybody for joining us today, especially to Michael and Ann. So, to get things started, let's start with getting a little bit of a sense of the two of you as leaders in your companies. Can each of you just quickly share a little bit about your history with the company and maybe an interesting fact from the company about your sustainability agenda? Ann, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Megan. And I'm really pleased to be here today for the next hour to share some of what we're doing at Colgate-Palmolive. So I'm Ann Tracy, as Megan mentioned, and I have been with Colgate for a pretty long time, nearly 30 years. And my background at Colgate is predominantly in the supply chain. I spent a lot of time in all parts of the supply chain, from manufacturing to customer service and logistics. And our program actually has a strong foundation in the supply chain over the past 20 plus years. So I feel close to it. And then about 2.5 years ago, I stepped into the role to lead global sustainability. So it's a fascinating time to, as I'm sure Michael will agree with me, to be part of this journey to helping the world get to a better place. I guess the one kind of interesting fact about Colgate and sustainability that I might share is, we've done a lot of studies, and the biggest environmental footprint associated with our consumer goods products happens when people who buy our products take them home and use them. So 90% of the environmental footprint happens when you're brushing your teeth, taking your shower, cleaning your house, etc. So that's something that we want to, hopefully you'll hear in our strategy, that we want to begin to take responsibility for communicating to people who buy our products.
That's really interesting. Michael, how about you? Can you give us a little background?
Absolutely, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm really delighted to be here and to join Ann, my distinguished colleague from Colgate. So let me start by saying I joined McCormick as the Vice President for Global Packaging Innovation, and about 15 months into my tenure, they created our strategy for purpose-led performance and asked me to lead sustainability globally and packaging as well. What is interesting, though, in coming to McCormick, you have to really understand that I grew up in a farm community, and as you know, McCormick is a true case of from farm to table. And so growing up in a farm community, even though I have a PhD in polymer chemistry, getting to lead sustainability for a global company like McCormick was a lifelong dream. And I tell you what, I'm very grateful that the company offered me that opportunity. Because for me, it is really about making an impact that relates to my childhood, growing up in that farm community. So McCormick is really addressing issues around farming communities, around how people use our products and how they preserve it. And growing up for me, that was very motivating. And so this is really a lifelong opportunity, and I'm delighted to be there. But The interesting idea about McCormick is really what is rooted in what we call the power of people, and really resonates with me. That power of people simply means that the McCormick people are the greatest asset for the company. That's what the company believes. And you know what? I grew up in a place where it takes a village to raise a child. And McCormick really lives by that every day. So coming to work for me is like going back home. So that's really why it's a great place for me to be. And that's why I like what I do today. Thank you.
Well, Michael, let's stay with you. I mean, I know for both of you, there's no such thing as an average day or a typical day in your jobs, but let's try for the sake of those who are watching us today. So can you just talk about what's the average day like for a global sustainability leader? And then, Michael, you might have touched on this already, but what's one of the most rewarding parts of working for the company? We'll stay with you, Michael, and then Ann will go to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Megan. So for me, it's really something that is bedded in our focus on purpose-led performance. So when I'm coming into work or even at night, what keeps me awake and keeps me happy is that I'm thinking about, as part of our purpose-led performance, we've set an audacious goal for 2025. How are we tracking on those goals? Are we making sure we're doing the right things to impact the communities? As I said, we're a typical case of from farm to table, specifically those farming communities. How are we impacting them? Because you have to really understand that we source our iconic ingredients that really drive us from over 80 countries, and there are about 14,000 raw materials. Are we making sure, one, that we're equipping those farm communities to really do their best, to do the right thing, and are we supporting them? And how is that tracking towards our commitment to deliver this top-tier industry-leading financial performance while doing well for our people, our communities, and the planet that we share? That's really what is happening on a daily basis for me.
Sounds like you probably have a lot of challenges scheduling calls with people all around the world.
That's for sure. When you're in a global world.
That's amazing. And so, can you talk about, is there a typical day for you? Can you sort of describe what that might be like, and maybe what something is particularly rewarding about working for Colgate-Palmolive might be?
Well, I think my story would be somewhat similar to Michael's in that he said it. My team at Colgate is not very large, but I consider all Colgate employees part of my team. Building the network, every single function, every single level of the organization has a role to play in, and as an ambassador of sustainability for Colgate to execute our program around the world. So I agree with Michael on that point. So any given day, internally, I'm reaching out to Colgate people, just like he is, I think, around the world. And also externally, no one company can do this job alone. So I have one of the things I found most rewarding about my role is just the incredible amount of pre-competitive and peer connects, like I am meeting Michael today. You always learn something new, and that's fascinating. And I think we all have to rely on each other. And Colgate relies on a lot of NGOs and external partners to get the job done, to help us form our strategies and build the action plans that we need to take to go forward. So I have a lot of connections externally as well as internally on a day-to-day basis. And what we've really been focused on right now as we speak is preparing to launch our 2025 strategy. So there's a lot of work going into communicating that to all stakeholders. So again, employees being one of our most important stakeholders, as well as the people who buy our products and the retailers that we sell to.
Yeah. So, and let's stay with the employee engagement question a little bit internally. And so, obviously both of your companies have very ambitious goals. A focus like sustainability can't be tackled by an individual or even a division within a company. Can you talk about how you're engaging your workforce in sustainability? How are you empowering them to be leaders, not only in their own roles, but maybe even in their communities or at home as well? So, and you've touched on that. So can you dig into that a little bit more?
Sure. And I mentioned that, you know, our sustainability program, just to take you through a quick history and time, is in the 90s, we were more focused on regulatory compliance, and then into the 2000s got more into the climate measurements, et cetera. So really integrated into the supply chain. So over the past 15, 20 years, we've built a lot of programs around reducing energy, saving water, greenhouse gas emissions, very much throughout our operations and our logistics programs. And our supply chain, I'm pleased to say, makes up the most of our employee base, has really embraced these programs. And we're really excited because for the first time ever in our new strategy going forward that we're about to launch, we're really trying to embed and integrate that program across all other parts of the business. So it's a lot of hard work around communication. I rely really heavily on our corporate communication team to help get that information out. And we do that both internally and through social media, and that really resonates with our employees, especially the younger employees who really rely on that for their information. So it's a lot of heavy lifting around communication and education. But I have to say it's been, you know, a delight because people want to hear about this. They're hungry for the information. So I think we're really poised to engage all employees as ambassadors.
That's great. Michael, can you talk about employee engagement at McCormick?
Yes, definitely. The employee engagement is paramount because that's really what drives everything we do. But more importantly, when you talk about, you have to think about our recently announced purpose, which is to stand together for the future of flavor, really complements our vision. And our vision is a world united by flavor, where healthy, sustainable, and delicious go hand in hand. When you think of it that way, it's like what Anne just said. It's really very motivating to see that. The other thing is, if you look at our this purpose, it is embedded in what we articulated as our purpose-led performance. And that's really about delivering top-tier industry financial performance while doing the right thing for our people, our communities, and the planet we share. I say that because when you talk about our people, remember, so these farmers in remote places are our people. And so we view them as an extension of our family. So it's not, that's what when I say our community is about where we live, where we work, and where we source. We really mean it. And so for us, it's really about making an impact in those communities. That's the approach that we are taking. So give you an example, the era of shareholder only is over. It's now about stakeholders. And for McCormick, there are 4 key stakeholders: the communities, meaning the farm communities in particular, the customer, the consumer, led by millennials and Gen Zs, and the company. Okay? So for us, what is critical is what impact are we making in those 4 key stakeholders? And everything we do, we want to impact those 4 key stakeholders positively. So for the farm community, for example, you know what is important for them? Livelihood, improving their livelihood. So you go back to your first question, are we doing things every day to improve the livelihood in those communities? For the customer though, it's really about, for them, it's about trust. Can they trust that McCormick would source things ethically, produce them ethically, transparently, and share it with them so that they can make claims on their brand based on what McCormick is supplying them? For the consumers though, it is about transparency. You know, with the advent of smart devices, you talk to a millennial, and I think the COVID has really expanded that view. People use their smart device. They want to find out, where are you sourcing this thing from? Is this vanilla natural from Madagascar? Right. Are you really treating the people fairly? They can get all that information. So that idea of transparency is critical. And then for the 4th stakeholder, which is the company, basically the shareholders, which means you and I, what is critical is having an enduring supply chain. If COVID has taught us anything, is that this idea of enduring supply chain is important. And that's where the history that we built in those farm communities enables us to deliver. And what I say that because growing up, I always go to where I grew up in the farm community. It's really about building what I call social license. And are you making positive impact that those communities will prefer dealing with McCormick over another competitor? That's really what this is all about. And so we talk communities in a broader sense.
I hear one common thread that goes throughout with what Michael was saying. It's the values of the company. The values are really core to engaging. If your company lives and breathes your values, that's key to engaging your employees and the other stakeholders.
Absolutely, and you nailed it.
Yeah, and especially that gives everyone something to strive for, right? It engages your whole team regardless of their role. You know, it's not just, oh, I just work in marketing, or I just work in comms, or I just work in sustainability or operations. It's how can we all be working towards this common purpose and this aspirational goal. I think that's fascinating, and definitely something that both of your companies have in common. So on the,
Megan, let me just add
go ahead,
Michael.
Yeah.
What is important in our company is you're asking me this question. If you ask all these questions to an average person, they will articulate it better than I'm doing because they are living it day to day. We are encouraging people to take that thing, take it home, because home is part of what we do. You know what I mean? So they can articulate exactly what I'm saying, maybe in a better way. That to me is when you're calling employee engagement.
Yeah. So getting a little bit more granular, your facilities are obviously critical parts of your environmental footprint. And I know that both of your companies have made significant and aggressive commitments to reducing your environmental impact from your facilities. You know, some of that's through renewable energy use, some of that is through certifications like USGBC. Can you talk about how you're moving forward on those efforts and maybe plans for the future? And then I think critically, for anybody who works in sustainability, for those on the line, you know, how do you balance those targets and that environmental footprint reduction with revenue projections, or most importantly, with ROI? Michael, would you like to go first, and then we'll go to Anne?
Absolutely. So this is a very poignant question because, you know, if you look at what we've done as part of our purpose-led performance strategies, we've set some concrete goals, measurable goals that are in most cases for the planet that are rooted on science. And those commitments span across three things: people, communities, planet. So in short, what you see us doing is we're linking financial performance to how we treat people, to how we deal with communities where we live, work, and source, and to how we address issues around the planet. You know what we call it at McCormick? We say it is doing well by doing good. That is the junction where economic performance and doing good meet together. And so that's one of the things we do. So if you look at what we did earlier this year, we released our first update on those goals. And I'm going to articulate some of them a little bit so you can see. I'm really proud to say we're making significant progress on all of them. And of course, you can tell that's probably one of the reasons, not that that's why we're doing it. We're corporate nights when they come up with the global 100 most sustainable companies this year. We were ranked number 1 in food, justifiably so, and number 22 overall amongst the corporate nights ranking. So today, look at what we've done. Under the people, we've committed to increasing the representation of women and ethnically diverse talent in leadership positions, including our board of directors. Check, we've done that. As you know, we're working towards 2025, having 50% of women in leadership positions in our company globally. By the way, everything I'm sharing is global, not just North America, because sustainability actually for us goes beyond that. 2 is we have continued to build resilience in those farm communities. What do I mean by resilience? building capacity and capability for those farmers to do what they do well. And to date, we've impacted nearly 16,000 farmers across the globe with our sustainable agriculture practices and partnerships. We've also made significant progress towards sourcing our 5 iconic ingredients, which constitutes the majority of our sales in some form or the other. And those iconic ingredients are black pepper, red pepper, oregano, cinnamon, and vanilla. And we're making tremendous progress. We said by 2025, we will source all of this 100% sustainably. And I think later we can talk about what we mean by sourcing them sustainably, because we are going beyond the traditional simply RFA certification. We're doing much more than that. And packaging though, Megan, that's where you and I live every morning. We share that in common. It's interesting that McCormick has achieved 84% of our plastic packaging that we deploy today around the globe can be either reused, recycled, or repurposed on a journey to 100% by 2025. So that's remarkable progress. We've also introduced what I call the new sustainable sourcing framework. We call it Grown for Good. This is the first of its kind in our industry, in the herbs and spice industry, I mean. And what that means is that we're going to go beyond just simple Rainforest Alliance. We're going to include other things on top of that farm level certification, which is what RFA is all about. We're going to add what we call community resilience in building resilience in communities, okay? Building that capacity and capability that I talked about. We're also including gender equality and women empowerment. We can talk in details what we're doing there. We're committed to that in our supply chain and in the farming communities. And the third point is this idea of ethical supply chain, where you're focused on making sure we do all the right things, including holding our partners accountable for ensuring that we don't have any kind of forced labor, not just child labor, any kind of forced labor in our business. And lastly, and part of that update is that we have really committed that by 2022, all our Maryland and New Jersey facilities will be powered 100% by renewable energy. This is on our journey to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And there are many more things that we're doing in that area, but I wanted to use this to highlight that we're on a journey. And that journey is going very well so far. And I'm sure Anne will have essentially the same type of commitment.
Yeah, and I know, in addition to the facilities question, and I know that Colgate-Palmolive has announced your 2025 sustainability strategy, and there's 12 ambitions in there, I believe. Can you give the audience a sense of what those are and your leadership and direction on those 12 ambitions?
Sure. So we're actually formally, really in a formal way, announcing that in the next month or so. And I could just, if I want to be short on words, I could just say ditto to Michael, because we're focused on many of the same areas, of course. But I mean, so we're at a really exciting juncture for Colgate right now, because we had in 2015, we set a 2020 strategy, and here we are in 2020. So we're about to sunset that strategy and then springboard into 2025. And like Michael said, it's a journey. So there's a lot of areas that, you know, we're just raising the bar, and then there's some new areas. But for 2020, we had these 24 commitments cutting across a lot of the same areas. And you mentioned in the beginning, Megan, climate. So, you know, we had targets like to cut our use of energy and greenhouse gas emissions in our operations.
Megan, is this?
Yeah, I think we might be losing Anne. We'll give her another minute to join back. I think she might have been having some.
Am I back?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yep. Yes, you're good. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Am I back now?
Yes, you are. Yep, all set.
So I was saying that we were meeting or exceeding our 2020 targets. So we raised the bar in those areas for 2025. So let's focus on 2025, which you mentioned. So we have 12 new bold ambitions, and they cut across, like Michael said, social responsibility, areas of social responsibility, as well as environmental. And we've built a whole new framework, and we've built this on the premise that the Colgate brand, the brand Colgate, is in more homes than any other around the world. We have the highest household penetrations, which is over 60%. And so we stepped back and we said, well, wow, that's a superpower for us, right? That means we can communicate with people who buy our products in all those households around the world. So that got us thinking about change starts at home. So we built a new mission for sustainability, which sits really nicely under our new company purpose, which focuses on healthier future for people, our pets, and their planet. And our mission is that Colgate invites 1 billion homes to create a healthy and sustainable future. So we've built these 12 ambitions. First and foremost, we have 5 that are really the ones that we own, Colgate ourselves own, under leading with our own Colgate home. That's our first area of focus. So it's things like, we have a big program as well, which Michael's spoken a lot about, around driving sustainable sourcing, particularly in our agri-commodities. For us, we're focused on palm and soy. Those are 2 ingredients that go across many of our products. We want to lead with zero waste facilities. We get third-party certification from the United States Green Building Council, which does LEED certification. We want to design more sustainable products for our for our consumers, for those who buy our products. And then we have taking care of our own employees, encouraging holistic well-being, and inspiring a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture. So we have clear targets in those areas, and now it's more than ever to have those areas. And then we want to help every home thrive, and we have 4 areas of focus there, which is more focused on our communities and our consumers. Mm-hmm. So as a leading oral care company, we are on a journey to get rid of cavities for all children in the world. And we've been focused primarily on communities which are vulnerable. So we have a program called Bright Smiles, Bright Futures, where we bring dental vans to the schools and help children learn how to better take care of their teeth and provide dental services. And then also under every home is helping the work in our communities with philanthropy and with schools. And then finally, the last area is protecting planet home. And that's where we have our big existential targets around climate, accelerating action against climate change and saving water, and finally eliminating plastic waste, which is eliminating plastic waste has quickly risen to the top to be one of our priorities. Yeah. So it cuts across both environmental and social areas.
So both of you have been incredibly successful in setting these targets, and I think leading your companies to where you are today. I don't want everybody on the line to think that it's really easy, as I'm sure they don't, but what's been the biggest challenge that you've faced, and what have you learned from that? And we'll keep with you, and then we'll switch back to Michael.
So, in our new strategy, we're on a journey to truly build purpose-driven brands. Now, it may sound like, we've got that, but, that takes a lot of work to really take your brands, and it's more than it's about the planet, as I mentioned. So that's what we were speaking about earlier, about re-embedding it across all functions of the company, starting with technology, R&D, and global packaging, to make sure they are designing products and thinking of keeping that in mind when we're building purpose-driven brands. And then, of course, going on to marketing and finance and the rest of it. Everybody has a role, as I said. Mm-hmm. So I think that takes constant work to really get there. And I think a lot of companies are on that journey. I was in a meeting earlier this morning and heard a statistic that most companies aren't satisfied with where they are in that journey. And I would include us. You can always do better. So, it's finding that strategic balance between communicating what your company is doing versus what your brands are doing versus what the products are doing. Yeah. And I think that's a tricky thing to get the balance right.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, we'll switch to you to talk about your biggest challenge. But before we do, I just want to remind folks, we're going to open it up for questions in a few minutes from the audience. And so if you do have questions, you can just use the chat feature at the bottom, and we'll handle all the audience Q&A at the end. But Michael, what's been your biggest challenge, and what have you learned from that?
So first of all, being a food company and consumer brand company, and to Anne's point, when it comes to food, it doesn't get any more ubiquitous than McCormick everywhere around the globe. Spices are king. But what we've learned is really a couple of things. One of them is that the consumers care about brands that are ethical and that are concerned about the planet in the true sense of it. They also really appreciate humble brands, people that come in not because they've done everything they're supposed to do, but recognizing, to the point I made earlier, that this is a journey, and the journey is measured by how you continually improve. That is a very important lesson. And we see this as a business imperative. That's really where this comes down to. And that's where we are focused on. And so when you look at how we've articulated it as our purpose-led performance, the three pillars, again, I go back, of people, communities, and planet. So the cornerstone, people, the cornerstone of McCormick's approach is helping people live better lives. Our business champions diversity, as you know, and inclusion, and is committed to the education of our employees and their development and well-being as well. And more importantly, working towards to drive better health outcomes for not just our employees and our communities, for people everywhere. Mm-hmm. So that's one piece of that thing. Doing it and doing it well and living by it on a daily basis is critical. On the communities piece, being dedicated to really impacting lives positively across the supply chain, whether it is helping farm communities build and adapt to change, or encouraging employees to get involved to make the world a better place through charitable giving and volunteerism, are critical things for us. I'll give you one interesting thing. When I was in Madagascar, after the cyclone in Nauru, and I just use that example because to show you the type of impact you can make when you are humble and you are learning. And cyclone in Nauru, people say, what is a cyclone? Oh, it's a tornado. No, it's not a tornado. It's a tornado on steroid. That's what a cyclone is. You've never seen anything like that. And so when that happened in 2015, before even all the relief agencies could get there, McCormick was there helping. How were we able to do that? Not that we had our people living in those communities, but our partner, Care International, had people living in the Andava and Talaha communities in Madagascar, where distance was the epicenter of this. And within a week, with our management committee approved money, sent it to Care, they were helping resettle people, build roads. And so when I went down there, these guys were dancing. I don't think they were dancing because it was me. They were dancing because a company far away in the United States, a global company called McCormick, came to their aid when they were in dire straits. That to me is what we've learned, that you got to be able to impact those communities. And that's what allows us to have that social license. And last is this planet piece. Reducing our carbon footprint is important. We've set some audacious goals and science-based targets for our own scope 3 emissions going into this for 2030. So part of what we're doing is really doing that. The idea of using renewable energy, using what I call recyclable packaging, circular packaging, which is near and dear to you, Megan. Driving it, as you know, for us is critical. So that's some of the things we're doing, and that's because of what we've learned.
That's fascinating. So both of you are with companies who are repeatedly on the major sustainability indexes globally. Whether it's the Dow Jones or the Global 100, whatever it is. I think we've heard a lot about your vision and all of the work that your companies are doing, but how do you maintain your position in that on those lists, and what advice would you give to sustainability practitioners who want to take their company's program and bump it up to the really exemplary level where your companies are? So Michael, we'll stay with you and then we'll switch back to Anne.
Okay, so that's a very important question, because my first advice is you have to be humble about this journey and realize that it is a journey. If you feel like you've done your best, you've arrived, that's the time you start to regress. That's number one. Number two, you have to be sincere and transparent with whatever commitment you are making. Okay? And number three is that you have to make sure you build some level of endurance to it. This is not a one-time thing. When you're on a journey, you just don't do once and you stop. So you have to build in some level of endurance in your program. So if you look, for example, some of the things we're doing, again, I go back to the farm communities, because if we don't have anything to sell, we don't have a business. Our business, as I said, is from a typical example of from farm to table. And so making sure that you're building resilience in those farm communities so that they can have an ability to take care of their community, their children, is very, very important. I want to emphasize, you have to find out what is critical for your own business. For us, this idea of empowering women in supply chain is critical. And we're doing it. We're not doing it because we are experts. You have to have the humility to bring people that know it better than you. So for us, we've partnered with Care International. They go into communities in Madagascar, in Vietnam, in Turkey, in Brazil. They do an assessment to understand what is really holding women back from full participation, meaning owning their own farms. When I grew up, as I said, in a farm community in Nigeria, 90% of people that worked in the farm were women. The farms were owned by men. That's unfair. So we're doing things sincerely that is eliminating that. So if you look at the cooperatives that we partner with, say Madagascar or Vietnam, you got women owning their own farms. That's what you need to do. By the way, when you empower a woman, you empower a community and you empower a nation. I sincerely believe in that. Otherwise, I won't be where I am. Okay? So that's one point. And finally, and for me, that is very, very important in all of this, is you have to really invest in those communities. We've done things that you read in our purpose-led performance. It is true, where we've given interest-free loans. Nobody gives interest-free loans. What it meant is that McCormick paid for the interest, and the farmers get the loans to do their work, and when they sell their crops, they pay back that loan without interest. The bank won't give you anything without interest. We pay for the interest. We've also partnered with the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, which is part of the World Bank. They understand rural communities. They understand these challenging communities. So what am I saying? You have to have the humility to know what your limits are. And you build your external relationship based on that. In fact, there is a saying at McCormick, you are as strong as your network. And those network of farmers, those network of financial institutions, those network of NGOs like CARE, WWF, and NCBA Clusa, that's what makes us unique. So as you build your own, my advice is, look at your own segment. Think about those you can leverage. By the way, one last thing, sustainability, to Anne's point, is a pre-competitive space.
Yep.
The more you can partner with people, even your competitors, the better. In fact, I describe it as my good friend Sanjay at MIT says it. It's a ripe area for co-opetition. Collaborate to compete. And I'll stop right there.
No, that's great. And Anne, actually, I know I really want to hear about your thoughts about how Colgate-Palmolive sort of keeps its leadership position in this space and what advice you'd give to other companies. But in the spirit of the co-opetition that Michael was just talking about, your fully recyclable toothpaste tube is not just an incredible innovation, but you've also open sourced that to your competitors, which I think is fascinating in terms of leadership and where that puts your company. So could you, I guess, sort of talk about maybe both of those, both the thinking behind the availability of the toothpaste tube design and then all the work that you put into that, and maybe wrap that up with some advice about how others can sort of follow suit. That'd be great.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we have amazing parallels in our journey that Michael mentioned. So the key points I was going to make is it does start with conducting a materiality assessment so you understand what you as a company can best impact. There's a lot of work to do out there, but you have to focus on where you have the biggest impact. So one for us is around save water, because it takes every product we sell takes water to use. Another big area is the plastic packaging. Every single product we make is in plastic packaging. And I think before I talk about the recyclable tube for a second, let me just say, we all rely on these important partnerships. So we've made the global commitment with Ellen MacArthur Foundation. That's one example of very important partnerships. So you have to also understand the landscape of partners that can help you make this happen. So on our journey with the recyclable tube, just to tell that story, we started several years ago. It may seem simple to just make a tube that's recyclable, just make it out of all plastic, just put the toothpaste in and sell it, right? Well, it's not that simple. And we worked with many partners, first and foremost, to ensure that what our final design looked like would be a truly recyclable tube. So we started several years ago, and we had several key criteria to start with when we made that design. One was that it would go into a mainstream recycling stream that already existed. So we chose HDPE, which is a milk bottle plastics, and we made our tube out of monomaterial layers of HDPE. The tube that you may have at home right now sitting on your shelf, because we haven't converted them all yet, and hopefully you're using Colgate, has it has an aluminum layer in the middle because if the fluoride and the in your toothpaste. That was the second criteria, that the toothpaste that our consumers used wasn't compromised in any way. And finally, that it was overall acceptable to the consumers. So fast forward to today, partnering with groups like the Association for Plastic Recyclers, or APR, in the US, and partnering with PRI in Europe and other similar organizations around the world to ensure that our tube was recognized as recyclable. So we got that recognition, and really that's only half the job. The other half the job that we are now embarking upon is working with a lot of NGOs like the Recycling Partnership to ensure that the infrastructure, the MRFs, and consumers understand that this tube is in fact recyclable, and here's how you recycle it. Finally, we've chosen to open source the technology, and we've asked all other tube manufacturers and suppliers of products with tubes to move to this recyclable tube, because that, just having Colgate tubes recyclable doesn't actually make them happen. It doesn't get the whole tube industry to be recycled. It doesn't count. So, and we worked with Ellen MacArthur on that to understand the definition of recyclability. So we rely on many partners along the way. We want open source. We've spoken to about 20 companies so far. Some of them are direct competitors who are interested in moving to that too.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I will try not to get too down the packaging wormhole with either of you, but as you guys know, that's obviously near and dear to my heart. And the consumer education piece, of course, is really critical, right? Helping consumers understand what to do with this innovative product or packaging that you've made. So we do have a question from the audience. So we'll start off with this one, and we'll kick it to Michael. So if you were to start this process all over again, what would you do differently and what would you do the same?
That's a great question. The reason I say it's a great question is because the things we are learning today, we didn't know when we started this journey about 4 years ago. And those things include the worsening of the climate situation. As you know, when we started the journey, it was a 2-degree they talked about, right? Paris Agreement. Now it's 1.5 degrees. And in fact, in Davos this year, for the World Economic Forum, when I was down there, they are saying that what we thought was 2 degrees is not just 1.5 degrees now, it's like 1 degree. Pre-industrial levels. And that's really something we didn't know when we started. That's one piece. The second piece is, who could have predicted that today the key to surviving in this area of sustainability is really focusing on the stakeholders. Before, we thought it was just shareholders, what the shareholders would have done. No. That's something new that we should have started with. You saw what BlackRock did in January, that proclamation that they will be looking at companies, not just on their financial performance, but they are on their financial and ESG performance. To me, that's flipping things upside down. So that's where we should have started before even talking about anything else. And finally, the thing that you can see, the changes, were dynamic of things we're seeing around the globe. The world, to me, even though people might say we knew that, it has become flatter and closer than we thought. That you can have a pandemic start in one small country or any country that you will ignore, and before you know it, it's affected the whole world. So what am I saying? As you design your strategy, if I knew what we knew now, we'll start by thinking about the world first and the implications and the economies and the interlinkages before even you do anything. That's real today.
That's interesting. How about you, Anne? If you had to start all over again, what would you do differently, or what do you think was really, critical to your success?
An additional area that Michael didn't mention yet maybe is around partnering pre-competitively. I think we're seeing more and more collaborations. I'll give you a few examples. There's a new fiber-based bottle that if I get it right, it was Pepsi, Nestle, Danone, I think Danone, a few companies coming together, and Unilever came to work together to develop new technology that's going to help us to reduce the footprint, to reduce the 2 degrees, et cetera. Another one is Walgreens, Target, and Walmart coming together to get rid of plastic bags. So, competitors actually working together on big common issues. And we're seeing more and more of that. But I think, if we had started that sooner, we might be further along. I think I think it comes under the whole theme of stakeholder versus shareholder and doing good, and having a purpose beyond just pure profit.
Oh, Anne, we might have lost you.
Well, I was just done.
There you go. Yeah.
I think I did.
Okay. So we have another question, which is, what roles or functions are the biggest champions or supporters of your sustainability programs from within the company? I mean, obviously you have your teams, but outside of that, what are those roles? What are those functions that are supporters, or I would actually say maybe even that are especially critical to the success of your sustainability operations? And we'll stick with you since we've got you.
So for sure, traditionally, supply chain has played a big role. I think I've mentioned that you know, they have been foundational in building our progress around environmental, around all the greenhouse gas emissions, energy, water reductions that we mentioned, as well as zero waste facilities. And they've really embraced it. And, you know, you mentioned earlier some of the recognitions like Dow Jones and CDP. We wouldn't have achieved that without the focus of the supply chain and procurement around sustainable sourcing. Going forward, you know, our vision is to engage, and we're already seeing it. It's already starting to happen. We're very poised to engage the commercial side of the business to really build purpose-driven brands, to engage all other stakeholders, including the people who buy our products and our customers, which are the retailers.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah. The commercial side, yeah, that's especially interesting. Michael, how about you? For McCormick, who are those big critical champions or supporters of your sustainability efforts?
So I really agree with Anne that the supply chain, by the way, that's your biggest, for us in the agricultural field, that's where your biggest carbon footprint is. So no question about that. It's supply chain procurement. But here's the thing. To be successful, though, I think that's what you're asking me. It's everybody's job. It is not a department. Yeah. From government affairs to finance, strategies around finance to fund some of the things we're doing. By the way, it takes money to do these things. And we are a for-profit company, right? But if you don't have the right financial strategies, you're not going to be able to fund that. To packaging, which is, for us, the way we view packaging, and Anne will agree, is our delivery vehicle. Your packaging is your biggest media. So making sure that you are doing those strategies upfront with packaging is critical. And then, more importantly, your sales function. They have to be able to articulate this for the customers, to articulate this for our consumers. And so what I'm saying is, if you do this as a departmental thing, you're dead on arrival. It has to be the responsibility of everybody. Yeah. Yes, I may be the spokesperson, but as I said earlier on, you can go to any function and they can do a better job than I have done because they live and breathe sustainability. That's in the DNA of McCormick.
I think that's really interesting. And the next question actually sort of, leans on your packaging R&D teams, because the next question is, how are you going to get the rest of the way to your 100%, recyclable, compostable, reusable packaging goals by 2025? I mean, I know both of your companies have made incredible progress, but there's still a gap that remains. So what plans do you have to achieve those targets that you've set? So
let me continue then. For us on packaging, it's an area that I think we understand very well. And Megan, Anne is right. You really need to collaborate in this area, even with your competitors. Let me give you an example. If you take PET, for instance, let's share plastics, not PET, plastics in general. You come up with a new way of having all these completely sustainable plastic for flexible, for all kinds of application, for tube, for Anne, for bottles for us. But you don't have the scale to bring it to a cost-effective level. Right. It doesn't go anywhere. At the end of the day, the consumers want to pay for value. And so having that collaboration, that's what I say, competition is great. So you can have the scale to deliver on that. For packaging, it is critical. That's why you see us, as you know, we are part of the AmeriPen, we are part of the CBA, the Recycling Leadership Council, where you and I serve on. We're part of Ellen MacArthur, we're part of Europen, we're part of all these different entities, not because we want to belong, but because we think this idea of competition, collaborate to compete, is the only way we can really achieve our goal by 2025. And last but not the least, We have to work together to ensure that we bring the government as part of this. We bring our communities as part of this. We bring our states as part of this. The mistake you're going to make is to say, is this state? No, or is this thing? All of us are in this together. That, to me, is how we accomplish this. So we have to enroll the government. We also have to do consumer education. Megan, you know that's a big thing for CBA. McCormick is also committed to that. Without the consumer education, people don't even know how to recycle. I want to remind you of the study that CBA did last year. Consumers are confused on what to recycle, right? So that's, I think we have to bring everybody. And the operative word is all stakeholders. That's how we have to solve it.
Yeah, team effort.
Yeah, I think just building on that. So for us, it's going beyond the recyclable and compostable to looking at reusable, looking at reducing the amount of plastic we need to use, and looking at designing new ways to deliver our products, meaning instead of toothpaste in a tube, maybe you have a tube that could then foreseeably be in a different type of package. So it's looking at whole new ways to deliver the product use, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And we are just about at time here. So I wish we could talk about that more, because I think changing consumer sentiments and what consumers are now more comfortable with, reusables or getting a product in a different format, that's a whole new frontier, I think, in the world of sustainability, especially for the consumer goods industry, for sure, because consumers are obviously, they're the most critical stakeholder, and in terms of your business operations. So, so that's great. Well, we are at time, so I want to thank both of you for today's session. I thought, your thoughts on, the critical co-opetition or, pre-competitive cooperation in the sustainability space, I think it's so important. And, I heard so much around, meeting stakeholders where they are, engaging partnerships, externally and internally, and really thinking about your stakeholders broadly. And I think there's a reason that both of your companies have been on these top lists of most sustainable companies globally for years. And, I think from what we've heard today, you're going to stay there. So thank you again for your time. I know you have a lot to do, so we appreciate it. And again, we'd like to thank PwC for their support of the CPG Speaks series. And we have several more sessions that are coming up. We have one on September 9th, next week, Stepping Up for Equality and Diversity with Carolyn Tostad. We have Building Direct Consumer Relationships with Jessica Alba and Nick Blahos from The Honest Company on September 17th. Grounding Leadership in Purpose with B. Perez on September 23rd. And you can register and find out more about those by going to consumerbrandsassociation.org/CPG Speaks. And finally, we'll welcome any feedback that you have. Please send any feedback or ideas through the chat feature, or you can email us at education@consumerbrandsassociation.org. And again, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, Michael and Anne. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Really a pleasure. Thank you very much. And Anne, always a pleasure connecting with you. Thanks, Megan.
You too, Michael. Thanks.
Okay, cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.